Autoplay is one of the most common features in modern live service games. It is present in games like Honkai Star Rail, Autoplay, Stellar Sora, Ghost Running 2 Exilium, to name a few. But here's something weird. Let's use Blue Protocol Star Resonance as an example. The talent quest requires players to kill 50 common overworld enemies to get basic talent materials. These enemies pose no threat. There is no mechanical depth nor strategy, and yet, we still have to do it. The design acknowledges the content isn't engaging, and that's exactly why it gives us the autoplay feature. So here's the real question. If a game includes content that is so trivial that it needs autoplay, why does that content exist in the first place? This video isn't about saying whether autoplay is good or bad. It's about understanding why it exists, its effects on game design, and the effects on the relationship between players and the games they spend time on. So, what is autoplay? It is simply that the game plays itself for us. In Honkai Star Rail, the system picks your skills and targets, and Blue Protocol Star Resonance, it auto-tracks and attacks enemies within a radius from a character. It seems that a quality of life feature implemented to respect our time and reduce fatigue, especially when we are clearing farming stages, doing repetitive tasks, or taking on something that is simply trivial. But once we start asking that guiding question, why does trivial content exist in the first place, we can start seeing a deeper pattern. If a game lets autoplay handle something, it's usually because the developers know one thing. The content isn't meaningful, but we still have to do it anyway. Like farming stages, repetitive tasks, underpowered enemies, these aren't gameplay. The progression gates package look like gameplay. Autoplay frees us from the manual grinding, but it doesn't remove the gate. It only removes the interaction, making it different from actual skipping. We still need to leave the game running and wait for the animations, and we are still putting in time commitments. Autoplay makes the grind invisible and tolerable, but it doesn't eliminate it, and that is important, because the grind itself is doing something. So this leads us to another question. If autoplay exists to save time and effort, why not just add a skip button? The answer is simple. It is because time spent in the game matters. It doesn't have to be gameplay time, just any time we leave the game running. As long as session time increases player attachment and user activity metrics for the game reinforces habit formation, maximizes exposure to monetization, as well as boosting retention statistics. Autoplay allows developers to stretch content without making it engaging. Players feel like they're playing even when they are not interacting. This is one of the core ideas behind autoplay. It converts gameplay time into passive time, while still counting as engagement. Here's where things get subtle. When we farm for materials in a game like Honkai Star Rail, relics, trace materials, essential materials, and more, we don't just receive the rewards, we are made to wait for the autoplay to complete the battle. Even though autoplay is doing the work, our brains still see the drop as something we've earned. And that is because our brains interpret this waiting as time cost, and time cost feels like effort, even though no effort was actually put in. This creates a subtle but powerful paradox. That is, autoplay makes us invested enough to keep going, but not invested enough to feel disappointed. Because we aren't actively playing, the loss from a bad relic or a run with abysmal material drops barely registers emotionally. The effort was slow, so the disappointment was low. Instead of questioning the system, we simply ignore it and move on, because we did spend time and part of us still feels like we've earned something, and that keeps us coming back for more. Honkai Star Rail is a perfect example of how autoplay plays a significant role in its design choices. Let us first look into the Simulated Universe game mode and its expansions. At higher difficulties, the enemies essentially become HP sponges. There's no strategic depth in most cases, as blessings and curio acquisition are random, and the design of blessings and curio system doesn't add any depth to the gameplay as well. Winning is guaranteed with enough luck on those two aspects, but each encounter drags on for far too long. Autoplay doesn't make the simulated universe more engaging, it simply removes the burden of physical input while preserving the time requirements. We sit through waves after waves of enemies, one node after another, ultimately reaching the boss that on its own take over 20 minutes to clear in more extreme cases. It is a system designed with engagement through endurance, with a small bit of decision making on top. Currency Wars is a game mode that has been released recently that functions pretty similarly but adds an extra layer of randomness and repetition with the character shop, gear and buffs. We refresh the shop, hunt for duplicates, match the bonds of characters, collect and forge gear, then go into fights to destroy enemies. But once again, autoplay is essential due to its slow pacing and the combat is extremely shallow. The system plays for us, and yes, the time cost remains fully intact. Across both modes, we can see the same pattern as earlier. The game relies on autoplay to make its time-consuming content bearable, but the design still requires the player to commit that time. This supports a critical point. The reliance on autoplay reveals how much of content is built around time rather than challenge as a primary gating mechanism. At this point, let's go back to the central question from the beginning. If autoplay can clear a piece of content perfectly, is that content actually gameplay? Idle games help illustrate this distinction. They revolve around passive resource collection, minimal input, and progression loops built around waiting. The gameplay is strategic management, not moment-to-moment action. But when a traditional RPG or action game relies on autoplay to clear meaningful portions of its content, it begins to function similarly. We watch instead of participate, we manage rather than play, and we progress through time spent, not decisions made. This isn't inherently wrong, but it's important to recognize what autoplay reveals, which parts of a game are designed to challenge us, and which parts are designed simply to keep us there. Once we start noticing the difference, we gain a much clearer picture of how modern games designs uses our time and how much of that time is actual gameplay. Autoplay systems seem like a simple feature for convenience, but they reveal much more about the structure of modern live service games. They show us where content has become filler, how time is used as a progression gate, how investment can be manufactured through waiting rather than playing, and they show us how our relationship with a game can shift from active engagement to passive management. I hope this has been thought-provoking, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.